Friday. I messed up on that again.
Oh, the video didn't play. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm going to do a
Oh no,
welcome.
if you show your
Yeah.
screen,
Yeah, I forgot to hit sound, so that was on me. I am going to try again. Um, Heck issues today.
We get to the highest point on the Independence Bridge down below. We saw a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. And a man spoke up and said, I'm Major John Cloud of the Alabama State Troopers. This is an unlawful march, will not be allowed to continue. I give you 3 minutes to disperse and return to your homes or to your church. That's the Major. May I have the word? He said, there will be no word. And you saw these men putting on their gas masks. They came toward us, beating us with nightsticks, bullwhips, trampling us with horses, and releasing their tear gas. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick. Had a concussion at the bridge. I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to die. But because of what happened in Selma and because of the leadership of Martin Luther King Jr., hundreds and thousands of people came from all across America and marched. Finally, we made it from Selma to Montgomery. But because of the action of marching feet, because people got in the way, they got in trouble, Lyndon Johnson introduced the Voting Rights Act. The Congress passed it and signed it into law. The point I'm making, we've come too far. We made too much progress. We cannot go back. We got to go forward. Not just for ourselves, but for generations yet unborn.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. So just wanted to start out with that because we were on the 60th anniversary and it's up to us now to carry on that legacy and we can do it. So I wanted to start out with something hopeful tonight. So Lee, take it away.
I felt that in my bones. I really did. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have some amazing guests from Americans for Tax Fairness. They are a diverse campaign of more than 420 national and local and state endorsing organizations united in support of a fair tax system that works for all Americans. And I think you're going to really enjoy this talk tonight. It's something we all need to know about and be well versed in. So, Jamie, take it away. We'll introduce our guest for the evening.
So thank you all for coming tonight. And so as we get going, if you're new to here, Demcast is a 501c4 and our goal is to spread digital messaging across social media. And to that, we have an exciting announcement on Wednesday at 1 Eastern. We are going to be launching a social storm focusing on Medicare. And so stay tuned for that. We have a link already up that will populate when we launch on Wednesday. And so a lot of you, I'm sure, remember last election cycle, our little Republican congressman is back. So to that end, I am so excited to introduce our guests. We have Liz Zelnick, who serves as a campaign director for Americans for Tax Fairness, and she has been working with the coalition to create a fairer tax code. And she has spent the last 15 years in progressive movements in government. And we're also joined by Rena Welch. and she has been with Americans for Tax Fairness for 4 years. She is a cancer survivor and a life liver, and she is passionate about our tax dollars, ensuring our country works for everyone, not just the wealthy few. So I'm excited to introduce these guys. We have a big fight in our hands over the next coming weeks. And so wanted to give everyone the background on what we can do. And if you have questions during this, please use the Q&A function because it will get lost in chat. So, and remember, we only need two no votes from Republicans in Congress. So there's no reason to despair right now because we can still do this. So, Rena, Liz, take it away.
Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. Again, I'm Liz Zelnick. I'm the campaign director for Americans for Tax Fairness. And while I'm new to ATF, I am not new to the fight. And I'm just so excited to be here tonight because I think we're at this very pivotal moment in our movement and in this larger campaign, that this is the fight that we've been prepping for the last number of years, since the first iteration of the Trump tax scam passed. It's here. We are at the door of the fight, and so we're so excited that so many people have signed on tonight to hear a little bit about kind of the state of play, what we can do, and some very awesome digital tactics that Rena will talk through next. But so if it's helpful, I can just give a very high level overview of kind of where we are in the legislative process. And then I'm obviously happy to answer any questions that folks have, all with the caveat that I am not the legislative director, so I will do my best. But a lot of this stuff is pretty high level, and it's more about kind of what we can do, who are the targets, the important folks to keep in mind in our advocacy over the next few weeks and months ahead. So where are we? It's a very confusing week in general right now because while we're prepping for the budget resolution fight, we are also kind of staring down the barrel of a potential government shutdown because Republicans can't get their lives together to pass a continuing resolution to fund the government. And so that is sort of the immediate state of play. But taking a step back to where we are with the budget fight, which is obviously inclusive of the tax language that we all care about, House and Senate need to pass the same budget resolution before they can formally begin work on the reconciliation bill. And so already they're 3 months behind schedule because of the public pressure from many of the folks on this call. Here's where things stand. A couple of weeks ago, House Republicans passed a budget resolution targeting $2 trillion worth of spending cuts to finance $4.5 trillion in tax breaks that largely go to billionaires and corporations. The amount of spending cuts mirrors the exact amount of money in the prospective bill that solely benefits the wealthy, meaning House Republicans are literally taking money from Medicaid, SNAP, and other crucial programs to fund tax breaks for billionaires. If House Republicans succeed in passing this new round of tax cuts for the wealthy, the top 1% will receive on average a $61,000 tax cut, while the top 0.1%, which is most of us, or the top 1% get $252,000, while the bottom 60% of families benefit by less than basically $1 a day. And when you factor in inflation, that means really most families are going to see their costs rise under this plan, while the wealthy get nearly an entire family's yearly income in the form of tax cuts. So this is all sort of happening in the macroeconomic sphere that we're in, where we're facing tariffs, we're already facing, shortages in eggs and really high cost of living in general, and inflation is not going down. So this is potentially going to be worse for working families across the country. But because of the pressure that Republicans are getting from their constituents across the country, including many folks on this call, where leadership has now ordered their members to stop holding town halls. And they are also, basically not showing up in public. And these are some of the more, even like the most conservative Republicans, and also in more moderate Republicans in swing districts, because they're scared of their constituents. They're scared of the pressure that they're getting from very real constituents. These are not paid protesters. These are real families who are showing up, asking questions because they're scared about losing their health care. They're scared about losing SNAP. They're scared about losing their benefits in their communities. So yesterday, today, and then again on Wednesday, House Republicans in the House Ways and Means Committee are basically going to be meeting behind closed doors to draft the outline for the tax cuts in more detail. And why is this bad? I mean, this is the worst of legislating, because it's all behind closed doors. There's no transparency. I don't even think their staff are in the room. And so they're basically putting together their plan behind closed doors. And it's all going to be about how they're going to cut healthcare, how they're going to cut more, SNAP and services to pay for their tax cuts for their billionaire donors. So basically, they're listening to their donors. They're not listening to their constituents who have very real concerns about this bill. So what can we do about it? March recess is the perfect time to apply this pressure. We know that they're going to be going back in district next week, and it's the perfect time to try to get a meeting with them. As I mentioned before, we're hearing news reports and from activists that they're not showing up to their town halls. They're nowhere to be seen. Another great way to do this is to hold an empty chair town hall in places where they're not going to come and be responsive to your needs. You can show up outside their district offices, and you can basically ask them, why are you going to be funding tax cuts for billionaires on the backs of working families by making these cuts to Medicaid? And what this really comes down to is what Jamie mentioned at the beginning. Really, it's pulling 3 Republicans off this bill, and then we can tank it. This is not impossible. This is something that we have seen similarly before with the ACA fight. This is not insurmountable. The Republican caucus does not have their shit together as much as it seems. And these moderate Republicans in these swing districts have been on the record to say they don't want to cut Medicaid. So we have to hold their feet to the fire. We have to hold them accountable to these public statements to ensure that this bill does not go anywhere. The Senate is a different animal. And essentially they have to reconcile the 2 bills to pass it. And they're, almost a month behind the House. So it's really less urgent than what we're facing in the House right now. And feels more possible just because of those super tight margins for how many seats they actually have. So all of that is to say, this is happening at the same time this week as the government funding. Friday is the deadline to fund the government. There's a big fight right now about the version that Republicans have put forth, which is a full year CR versus a 1-month CR. And there's also poison pills and some pieces in there that actually cut services. So we know it's actually not a great and or a clean CR. And it remains to be seen if Republicans are going to be able to avert a shutdown at all. But all eyes are on the House in the next 24 hours. We know that tomorrow night they will vote on this. Essentially all of these things are connected, right? The government funding shutdown fight, how their budget blueprint that is essentially providing all of these tax cuts to billionaires on the backs of working families and cutting really critical services that we all care about and that millions of Americans use every day. All of these things are connected. So now is the time to show up, to make calls, send emails, hold empty chair town halls, find out ways that you can get involved. There's a lot of folks who are doing tax specific work in the states and who are looking for folks to show up and to engage. So I know that's a lot of information and I'm happy to answer questions, but I also want to make sure I give enough time to my colleague Rena.
Thank you so much for that, Liz. Thank you so much to Jamie and Lee for having us, and thank you so much to every single one of you joining us tonight. I see y'all online, and it really does make a difference. So I really appreciate you joining us tonight. So we have compiled some graphics that are called accountability graphics. So we have graphics that have House members who have voted for the Trump tax scam, and we are including the number of constituents that they are letting down with, who are losing healthcare, who are losing SNAP, who their student loans could go up, all to give their top 1% of constituents these giant tax cuts. So I'm going to include that in the chat, as well as our tax toolkit for now. I know that Jamie also just put some messaging guide in the chat. So I encourage y'all to check that out. And if you do not see your representative there who did vote for the Trump tax scam, I've also included my email, so definitely feel free to reach out. But yeah, I will definitely give it back, but I just want to say I think we can all agree that giving tax cuts to the top 1%, like that are the size that are larger than what people make an entire year. Some people are getting double that, triple that. And you cannot defend it. And I think that every MOC who has voted for this should defend it to each one of their constituents, because it is really, and they can still change their mind. And that's what's really important.
And we have quite a few questions already. So
sorry, I'll just answer the
Yeah.
link to the graphics, because I included a folder with all of the graphics. So there are 30 MOCs represented there. And then the toolkit will have some of our messaging. We have some really amazing graphs included as well that show these tax cuts and break it down for people. So yeah.
And I will make sure all of these graphics are also uploaded into our tax toolkit, which all of that stuff will be also in the messaging doc that we've put around. So one of the questions is there any legal recourses for paying federal tax when none of the tax dollars are going to programs that actually support working Americans?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I should be full disclosure there, but I think what we're seeing now, I mean, and this is another piece of like this perfect storm of sort of bad policy, is that with the Elon Musk Doge cuts that are happening across critical government services and agencies, we are seeing that with this attempt to downsize the IRS, staffing levels, right before tax day, right? Tax day is April 15th. And a lot of people kind of wait until the last minute to file their taxes. There are going to be not only fewer people on staff to help with everyday Americans who are filing their taxes who have issues, but on the flip side of that, there are going to be fewer people at the IRS who are going to be going after tax cheats, right? Wealthy tax cheats that are, looking to curb the system and not pay their fair share in taxes. So that is going to be lost revenue at a time when, Republicans are going to cut even further to fund further tax breaks for billionaires. So really the through line is there. All of this is connected. This is billionaires who are taking over our government, who are demanding more tax breaks, and they want all of us to pay for it.
So trying to find a website that the Democrats have put out that shows district by district. So if I'm multitasking, that's why. um, it might be illustrative to also include the number of constituents who will be getting the tax cut in each congressional district. Is that included? That might be harder information to come by.
Yeah, so we will be putting out some more reports closer to tax day that include multimillionaires and billionaires in each state. So definitely more coming soon on those specifics.
What? So we've gotten this question a couple of times. People who actually have Democrat representatives. So how can they support, pressuring some of these Republicans?
That's a great question, and one we get a lot. So the great news is that Democrats are on board. They are on message. They are fired up. Leadership is on board with this messaging. Everyone is in lockstep that we are not voting for a budget that gives tax breaks to billionaires and pays for it with cuts to Medicaid. And so I think for the first time in a long time, Dems are really in sync and on message. So I hope everyone feels really good about that. And I think that is a huge testament to all the work that you folks do every day, communicating to Dems and making sure that they should not cross that line. And I think what we can do is, first of all, thank them. I think a lot of Dems maybe are not getting the thank you notes right now, which is totally fine. But I think it's always good to thank champions and, reinforce the fact that they should stay on message. And I think the other piece of it is trying to help in the swing districts in any way you can. And so sometimes it's digital actions. But I know that Swing Left and Indivisible are both doing really great work in these swing districts right now. And they will be the better, voices to say, what can I do from a blue state? I feel like I want to do more. They have great resources, and we're going to be hopefully working with a lot of these national groups with a state presence around tax day. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we're doing to really, hold folks accountable. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity to plug in right now.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, and I'll also say that I will definitely send links to Jamie and Lee afterwards to make sure y'all get all of these. I love the chat. Keep it up. And I'll just say, because I live in Ohio, my house member is a Democrat, but I know people who are in different districts, so that's one thing I would also add. I will definitely be talking to my House member. I do need to definitely talk to the senators, but I'm also going to look around to my greater community and, think of people who are in different areas than me, and I'm sure that they have a community. So definitely keeping that in mind as well. And also, I think, you know, another thing that we are putting out regularly at Americans for Tax Fairness are specific reports around the Trump tax scam. So we just put out a report about Big Pharma and the tax breaks that they are lobbying for right now. So I also think that we can plug into different issue areas as well. There's no reason that big oil, big pharma need billion-dollar tax cuts. That needs to go to communities.
I've also seen a few questions about the PACT Act cuts that we've heard about in the continuing resolution.
So I would say most things are on the table right now. And the issue is that we don't have policy details for the specific cuts. We have directions that specify the amount and this is the amount is the floor, not the ceiling, the amount of cuts that need to come from respective committees. And we know by the sheer number of the floors for the directions for these committees that there's no way the math ain't mathin' without them cutting Medicaid and SNAP. We know that for sure based on the directions. I don't know specifically about the PACT Act, but I know that veterans groups are very concerned about pieces of the budget in terms of what could be included. And so I think, there are going to be a lot of groups who are concerned once we see the details. But I think in terms of your advocacy now, you should ask those questions for these swing Republicans and say, can you commit to no cuts for the PACT Act? Can you commit to no cuts for Medicaid? Get them on the record, because when we see the details of this bill, they will be bad. And so I think that the power that we have is very strong right now.
Yeah, and one comment I've seen quite a few times is on Democrats. And, if you are in a Democratic district, they still need to hear from you, because I guarantee you Republicans are calling. And so, if you are maybe lucky enough to be in one of those Dem districts where they are out on the front lines every day, you need to call and thank them. If you're living in, a Dem district that might be a little bit vulnerable, call and let them know that you have their back if they stand up and do the right thing. Because sometimes I think we forget that Democrats need to hear from us just as much as Republicans do. And so, I'm Red State Utah, and one thing we're doing next week, because they won't do a town hall, we're going out in front of the federal building and we're inviting local Democratic elected leaders to come and speak. So that's something, that's pretty easy to arrange. And, we need to make sure that the Democrats know that we have their back so that we don't chance losing some. So, because right now, all of the Democrats are a no. And they're not going to go with this. So we need to make sure they understand that we need them to keep that vote. Have you guys ever worked with Patriotic Millionaires on any of this?
They are part of our coalition, and I'm actually one of my very good friends, Jody, works for Patriotic Millionaires. So yes, we work with them.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of questions on messaging. I think in this instance, Democrats have been pretty consistent with their messaging. Every week we also put out, that we just got it, so I just put it in this doc, messaging guidance from the Democratic policy so that everyone kind of can stay on message. I think they are getting better disciplined, especially the House Democrats. So
I can also, after this, share our fact sheet and talking points. So they're going to be definitely more geared toward people who are trying to either get Hill meetings or engage with their members of Congress. But I think it's generally really great for just including it and posting online or sharing with friends.
yeah, and if you want to send that to me, I can get this into the doc. Just thought instead, because we usually share so many links in a call, I just thought it would be easier if we just had a doc where we drop all of this in, where you can open it and have all of the information. And I know on the continuing resolution, government shutdown is Friday. Republicans have done this behind closed doors. And one thing I've heard a lot is some confusion between the budget resolution and the continuing resolution. Was at a local indivisible meeting last week, and we had a lot of people confused by that. So can you kind of give a quick rundown of what those two different things are?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the continuing resolution is in terms of like what we're focused on most immediately is how the government gets funded. The deadline for the current CR runs out this Friday. So really Republicans only have a few days to figure their lives out and pass something. Democrats at this point should not be voting for this. There's a lot of bad stuff in it. It's not a clean CR, which means that it's essentially matched level funding from the previous fiscal year. And we use all these acronyms, but so that is one thing, right? That does not have anything having to do with tax cuts in terms of what we're talking about. The Trump tax cuts from 2017 expire this year, as we all know. So in order to extend them and make deepening cuts to the programs that we all care about, that is what's in the budget resolution, which is basically the blueprint before the actual bill that the Senate and the House have to agree to. Right now, the Senate has their version, the House has their version. They have different versions, so they have to reconcile them. It's pretty complicated about which way they do it, whether the Senate takes the House version and marks it up, or they go into conference, again, behind closed doors and work out the differences there. We haven't understood sort of the process by which they want to do this, but they're two separate things. But in terms of the legislative pieces, but they're connected because they all have to do with Republicans who are using different vehicles to advance the priorities that put billionaires over working families. And we're seeing this over and over again across all of the things that are happening across government right now, including these two pieces that we're talking about tonight.
So many questions. This is the question on the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act does not factor into any of the budget bills. However, of course, there's a caveat on that. We are hearing that Republicans might try to put the SAVE Act in with a bill like for the California wildfires to make it that much harder for Democrats to say no to it. So that is, we don't know. They keep pushing off the SAVE Act vote. Democracy has been one of my biggest issues. So they have pushed it off for at least another 2 weeks, but we are hearing that.
Yeah, I think at this point, most things are on the table, and they are going to have to get creative if they want to get to the numbers that each chamber has indicated they need to get to in order to exact these cuts. And so all of the political reporting sort of follows this dramatic process. I think what we should be deeply concerned about now is communicating that this bill should not include tax breaks for billionaires and corporations paid for by working families, right? It's like very simple that they want to screw over working families once again at a time when costs are rising and most people can't afford rent and can't afford to put dinner on the table for their kids. So this is all about a billionaire takeover of government, and Republicans prioritizing those billionaire donors over their constituents who they should be listening to.
Yeah, and there's another question on messaging that people don't think that there's any messaging. And I know I know this is a tough question, but in a lot of cases, it really is up to us to be the messenger. Um, you know, why are we waiting for somebody else to come in and save us when we have the capability to be even a more powerful messenger than someone like Ken Martin or Chuck Schumer? I mean, we're the ones that can tell our stories and how it's affecting us and our communities. And that is a more powerful message. You don't need a million followers on social media to tell your story and how it's going to impact your community, because you don't know who is saving your memes and sharing them. Um, so so don't wait for somebody else. Just go out there. In this doc we've been putting, we have a lot of Americans for Tax Fairness assets already in the toolkit. We've got the hearing clips where the Dems were laying out what was online. Go in and share that. So all of that is in there.
I also just saw a comment from Peggy about writing letters to the editor. Amazing idea. We have an LTE toolkit that we actually would love to share along with everything else we've talked about tonight, which have different templates based on, your identity and the story that you want to tell. So we'll absolutely share that as well.
And local press wants these stories. So they really, really want these local stories because that is their kind of bread and butter. So
Yeah, and I'll just add the graphics that we include with the numbers of, people who will be affected in each House district. That's a great thing to bring up as well. And I'll just, someone put, why aren't there more digital days of action? I think one reason we are not seeing as much that is happening. So the other day there was Scrap the Cap Day, which means that all millionaires have already paid into Social Security for the year because they have made $136,000 already. Elon Musk made that much 15 minutes into the new year. And then they just stopped paying into Social Security. Meanwhile, we all pay all year. So Social Security works, Demcast, we all got together to talk about that day. But because the billionaires are buying up social media, they have purposely made it hard to organize. And that's why these calls are so important, so that we can connect, so that we can mobilize. But yeah, I definitely check out searching Scrap the Cap and our pages, as well as some of the people who've added their ats in the chat, so we can all amplify each other and stay organized. As well as Jamie said, there will be a day of action this Wednesday too.
yeah, and I also
Tax
believe
day
that,
we will.
and I think VoteBets is planning something for tomorrow as well against the attacks on veterans' health care. So
I think the problem is it's a shit show and it's coming from all sides. So
yes.
we're having trouble keeping up. I did see a question in here about the CR, and do you know how many Dems are going to be for it and who those Dems are?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. We were just talking about this at our staff meeting today, and it's so hard to know. I think we have a better chance of keeping the Dems together in the House on this than we do in the Senate. And that's just going by like conjecture based on previous voting records in the Senate of some more controversial Republican-backed bills thus far. Has nothing to do with the contents of the bill. I will say that ATF, we signed up, Public Citizen drove a sign-on letter that was, I think the deadline was this evening to sign on to it, but hundreds of organizations signed on to urge Democrats to vote no on the CR because it was not a clean CR and it had poison pills in it. So people are organized against it, and I wish that I had more intel on the number of Dems who I think will vote for it, but I think the time to pressure them is tomorrow morning because the vote will be tomorrow evening.
This morning, there was a call with Leader Jeffrey's office who did say that right now all Democrats are no. So that is the good news. However, we need to keep reinforcing that because if the number of calls Republicans start flooding the zone, we can get that changing. So. Yeah, we have a comment on, don't forget the Virginia governor's race. It's actually this year. And to that end, we'll give you a little sneak preview, but our next democracy briefing is actually going to be focusing on the Virginia races this year. And I believe we are going to have one or both of the Florida special election candidates as well. So I'm pretty sure Gay has confirmed, and we're just waiting on Josh. So. And all of these resources, literally, we are going to be keeping them in this Word doc. So we will do a follow-up email with this doc in there. And then any of the links that Americans for Tax Fairness, I've already put in like their Google Drive and all of that in there so that you would have it all in one spot. And yeah, I think right now the vote's tomorrow night, correct?
Yes, on this CR in the House.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the continuing resolution would be till the end of September. So, and the Dems were the House Democrats, not Senate.
Yes.
There's, of course, one Democrat senator who would be likely to vote with the Republicans. I won't name names, but I think we all know who that is. So. What are you guys' thoughts on an idea of a flat tax? And how will all of these IRS layoffs impact the new filing season?
So in terms of the layoffs, I talked at I'm not sure if the person who had this question heard my spiel closer to the beginning, but the Doge, Elon Musk takeover of government and IRS cuts are going to have, a real impact on tax filing season in the form of wealthy tax sheets not being audited in a way that they have been over the last few years, which has generated, millions of dollars for, our economy and the government. So, I think that's going to have a real impact. And then the other part of that is anyone who needs to get someone on the phone at the IRS if they're having issues with fraud or filing technicalities, it's going to be very, very difficult to get a human on the phone to help folks through that process. So that is going to be really, really bad. In terms of, proactive legislation, I think we are so focused on defense right now, but I think eventually we, along with all of the groups that work closely with us in coalition, really want to reimagine a proactive way to think about a fairer tax code. And, I think that we're just going to have to see what shakes out and what's possible. So, yeah.
And is anyone expecting that Trump will do his little game playing and threaten some of the Republicans to try to get this done?
Oh, I'm sure he will. I think if recent history has been any indication, but again, I think like what's more important to focus on right now is not what Trump is going to do, not what's the drama of what's in the bill, what's not, and all of this stuff that's happening on Capitol Hill under the dome, but what are we doing in district to hold these swing district Republicans accountable who have already come out publicly and said that they don't want cuts to Medicaid, they don't want cuts to Social Security, they don't want cuts to SNAP. We need to hold them accountable and make sure that they're going on the record and answering to this vote if they end up voting for it. And so again, I think, it's not insurmountable. The margins are tight. 3 votes is not a lot. So I think it's just good to keep in mind of like, what do we have control over? We certainly don't have control over Trump and what he posts on his social media website. So I think it's really important to focus on what we do have control over.
Yeah, there is a comment that just came in. It's really hard, but we need to give people a new American vision, and it's going to be key. And I 100% agree with that. We can't be just talking about Trump and the Republicans all the time. We need to give people, and especially Democrats who feed off of hope, we need to give people something to fight for. And that's one of the reasons I started with the John Lewis video, as a reason to something to fight for. We know we're in a tough spot right now, but we control our own destiny. And, we need to make these elected officials more afraid of us than they are of Trump. And that is how we do change. So, and it doesn't matter if you have a Democrat who is maybe waffling sometimes, we need to make sure they're more afraid of us than they are of Trump, because ultimately they get power when we give up power. And just here in Utah, we had 3 protests on Friday. 3. I was exhausted. I couldn't even go to the second one. We had a science march. There was a protest inside the Capitol because it was the last day of legislation. And then they banned the pride flag here on government property. So we unfurled a 200-foot long pride flag on the steps of the Capitol. So, right now that's, and Republicans literally were running out the back door because they could not face us. So don't ever give up. So
Don't give up, and remember that there's enough for all of us. Like they will lie and, put us against each other, but there is more than enough for all of us. And I'll just say on the flat tax really quickly that because tax day is coming up, I think, a lot of people are interested in the flat tax because taxes are so overwhelming. So people will talk about it as if it's a simplified version. But the simple fact is that it benefits the rich more than the rest of us. I put in a link and I'll just put it in again really quickly. The Kansas flat tax plan was going to give Charles Koch $875,000 tax cut per year. And the median household income in Kansas is below $70,000. So there's more than enough for all of us, and we pay our fair share of taxes with every paycheck, and the ultra rich and corporations can pay their fair share too.
a list of the most vulnerable Republicans.
Yeah, and also the Google Drive folder that we include also has, the net worth of some of these Republicans who are very, very, very rich. So, that's something that is worth mentioning to some of them possibly.
Last week, I saw Republicans trying to attack AOC because her net worth is only like $100,000. She's like, really? You're coming after me because I don't have any money? That's fine.
She's like, I'll pay more too, tax the rich.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's
she's
not the
like-
people that we're talking about. We're talking about the billionaires, and they want to take all the attention away from these billionaires who have more money than they could ever spend in the world and are using it to buy our elections.
Yeah.
But the power of the people is way stronger. AOC actually had a point where she was saying, the amount of billionaires couldn't even make up a New York borough. That's why they're, we outnumber them, and our vision will make the economy work for everyone, including them.
Yeah, and we also need more people like her representing us, right? Someone who, was a bartender and understands what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. We need more people like that. We need to elevate their voices. So Republicans can make fun of her all they want. They're just jealous that she's more popular than they are.
Here's a comment of Democrats should go to Republican areas and talk about why they should vote for them. I absolutely agree. And and it doesn't have to be, a House Dem or a Senate Dem. Get your local Democrats together and go hold a town hall. I mean, and give people that reason to vote for. Pick your young leaders that are up and coming and have them go out and hold the town hall and talk. So we don't need, and I tell you, the press eats that up. And the more the press eats that up, the more scared Republicans are going to get.
I will say too, this is a bit of a wonky piece that may be included in the tax bill, but there might be a cutting of a deduction that like state fiduciaries used in the municipal bond market. All of that jargon is to say that like state treasurers and like the chief financial officer for your state government, essentially, they take on different forms, use a tax deduction write-off to basically make more money in the municipal bond market to pay for state and local, you know, infrastructure projects. So sometimes it's education, it's potholes, streets, bridges, roads. So all of these things will get more expensive on the state level if this piece of the bill goes through. So if you have a relationship with your state treasurer, I would reach out to them and see what their thoughts are. I know a lot of the Democratic state treasurers are speaking up about it. So that's another sort of grass tops constituency that you can pull into the discussion on your state level.
Posted a picture of the 200-foot pride flag on my Blue Sky account. They're actually crazy heavy. It was more of a workout than I thought. So, and how do we counter Republicans' fear of physical violence against them if they go against Trump? That I'm not sure. So
I would definitely say, mention, and I'm interested in everyone's perspective, but definitely mentioning, he's all talk. He will, backpedal the whole way, as we've seen him do again and again. And I think, drawing it back to what the constituents want, who, they work for us, they're supposed to. So that's definitely something I would add.
comment, I've contacted my county Dem org requesting an action plan. Well, fun fact that county conventions are starting now. So that's where you change the Democratic Party. You need to become a voting member in your county party so that you can vote for your county leadership and vote for your state leadership who votes for the DNC. So this needs to be a grassroots up effort, not a grass tops down effort. Grass tops down never works. It needs to be grassroots up. We put the pressure and then it filters up. And we're seeing it, because we saw the first 2 or 3 weeks of the Trump admin, Democrats were silent. They weren't speaking out. And now they're actually out there at the protests. So what we're doing is making a difference. It may be slower than we want, but we're seeing the difference now. Yes, Republicans are really afraid. And I think we need to make them more afraid of voters than primary challengers. And I think that's where their fear is right now. And certainly something I've heard from, a couple of Republicans here. One of the Republicans here will actually talk to us, and and he's always primary challenged, but he's worried that one day they actually will succeed. So we need to make them more afraid of the voters than the primary challengers. So. All right, well, I think that's it for the questions. And then, so I said, everything is in this Word doc. We will make sure we send it out in an email tomorrow, update all of the links from Americans for Tax Fairness, and, get those calls going tomorrow. So.
Reminder that our next call is the 24th of March. Please, please join us. I think you're really going to want to hear about Virginia and Florida.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be on with everyone tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Liz.
night.
Thank you, Rena.
Bye.